Guys, make sure to address your trauma before you travel. This has been something that I've been really discovering about myself ever since I moved back to Canada after a couple years abroad. I noticed that you just can't hide from yourself. Wherever you go, there you are. And when they say, the grass is greener on the other side, it's not. The grass is always green where you water it. And I know everyone likes to say that, and it's kind of common knowledge, but it really is true. Because you get to a point where when you're constantly doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, it's oftentimes just for some serotonin or like a dopamine hit. It's like a source of pleasure, but pleasure is completely different than happiness. Not even happiness, but just contentment, peace. It's more of like a state. And obviously, our whole lives we try to discover that, what it looks like for ourselves. That's part of what enlightenment means. It's always an inner battle. It's always a lifetime of figuring that out for ourselves. But it really is a state. It's really a state of mind. It's like I'd rather be a consistent, not too happy but not too sad, as opposed to a really volatile, oh, yesterday was the greatest day ever, the next day was terrible. That type of thought process is one aspect of, it's just one aspect of life. And the thing is that constantly traveling and trying to chase the next high, it's not sustainable. Like, it's always fun the first few times, but then you realize that in life, whether it's you're traveling a lot or you're achieving a lot or you're actually, you're making good money, you're making progress in the gym, perhaps even, you get a nice girlfriend, you realize that sometimes your trauma is always going to come up to you. It's always going to resurface. You're always going to have demons. There's no external cure for an internal wound. Now, there's definitely a band-aid. And of course, there's a way to craft an environment which is more enticing to you, which is more healthy for you. Like, for example, finding a better set of friends who are ambitious, who want the best for you, who are not secretly jealous of you, who align with your values, quitting smoking, quitting drinking, just being sober, fitness, like all this stuff is good and it does for sure contribute to a better life. But trauma is trauma at the end of the day. And I'm slowly realizing for myself that you can be as strong as you want internally. Like, a lot of times as men, especially for competent men, we always hide it well. We always use it to fuel ourselves. But I think the key is just finding one person you can trust or who can somewhat understand you and just telling them about it. Like, just telling them, calmly, like, this is what's going on. And your real friends, they're going to have your back. If you have to see a professional, go see a professional. I personally don't think therapy is the best thing in the world. However, I do admit that if I find a good professional, it's good to let some stuff off your chest and have another person listen. But I think the key is that you just want somebody to listen. Like, it's not, especially as a man, it's hard to just cry on someone's shoulder. It really is. But you have to address your trauma before you travel. And travel doesn't just mean, taking a flight to Jamaica or going to Granada, Spain for, the summer. That's part of what I mean by travel. Like, it can also mean how far you go in life, because travel, it's like you're getting from point A to point B. So it can be metaphorical. It can go towards anything. But I feel like you really have to address the trauma along the way. And I feel like there's this myth out there that some people actually harbor their trauma because they assume that it's going to propel them to great levels of success. Because when you look at, athletes like Kobe Bryant or Mike Tyson, or, people like even businessmen, for example, Tony Robbins, people like them, they've often had a lifetime of pain, of trauma, of trials and tribulations. And of course, admitted by them, it's been a huge proponent in their hyper success. But I think that at the end of the day, I think it's actually better to have that trauma and to deal with it somewhat. Because it's more long term. Like, you're able to sustain yourself more long term. Like, if you use trauma to fuel you, it's like motivation. Motivation can get you really, really, really far short term. But the thing that lasts long term is consistency. And motivation is not always going to be consistent. And that's why I think it's better to travel when you're dealing with your trauma, or dealing with your trauma before you travel. Because you can still travel to great heights. You can still fuel success. Reach you can still reach very high levels of success. But I honestly think that you will reach high levels not just through using your trauma to fuel you, but also by somewhat dealing with it and being self-aware about it. Because you have it, it's still going to affect you in many ways, but you also have the tools equipped to actually manage it. You actually have the tools equipped to go where you want to go, and to somewhat regulate yourself emotionally. Like, that is very healthy. A lot of times, when you look at whatever it is, successful athletes or businessmen, they often reach that peak and then they just ride on it, and then they get hooked on cocaine. They catch gonorrhea from sleeping with 20 prostitutes a month. Like, it's true. It's genuinely true. Like, there's just less emotional regulation. And of course, sometimes it can be genetic. Everyone makes their own decisions. Sometimes you just get on a high from all these successes that you get. But I think a lot of these decisions come from trauma. And I feel as though that when you reach a level of success, or you reach a level in life when you travel far, it's better to be ready for it. That's why you shouldn't beat yourself up if you don't have a couple million in the bank when you're 26. It's like, if you get a couple million in the bank at 39 or 40, not only are you still ahead of most people, but you actually have the maturity to handle it. You can actually get even further, way further, than someone in their 20s who maybe had the same head, or who had the head start. But the thing is that you're taking a more sustainable, consistent approach. And part of that is by dealing with trauma. So always try to deal with trauma before you travel. Because at the end of the day, wherever you go, there you are. And like I said, I'm realizing this for myself, and I have to deal with it as well. I'm going to New Zealand for the winter. I'm going to live there. Like, it's going to be great. But I'm not as excited as I was when I first traveled. Now, I think that's somewhat normal. However, I feel like there's still some things I should probably work on before then, because there should at least be a bit more joy. And don't get me wrong, I am super happy that I'm doing this. I'm very grateful for it. But I'm realizing that it's important to establish roots. It's important to be aware of your traumas. It's important to be aware of some of your setbacks and blind spots. And it's just overall better if you deal with that before the next trajectory, because sometimes that is actually what's holding you back from the next step. So always try to deal with your trauma before you travel.